What is going on? It is Eric Bach. Today, we're going to cover 7 big mistakes that former athletes make when they are trying to get into shape. Pay particular attention to number 7 because without this pivot, without this mental shift, the others are pointless. I was putting together the notes for this podcast, and then last night, the NFL Combine started as of filming this, and my 3-year-old daughter, Zoe, sat down and watched with me. She was watching 40-yard dashes and then some of the on-field drills. And I just had to think, right? Like one of the first things I recall, at least in terms of physical activity for me, was seeing my dad come back from karate in the evening. So my dad was an engineer, came back after a long day, went to karate, and he would stretch out directly on the floor. Say if it was football season, we'd be watching highlights, something like that, right? And seeing him stretch, pretty soon I would be on the floor, jumping on dad's back, doing push-ups with him, stretching, all of those things. And it just kind of reinforces the importance of the habits that we take, people around us, not just kids, but our friends, our colleagues, our partners, whoever, they are modeled before people listen to what we say. And so if you want to show up and if you want to lead by example with the people who are most important to you, it comes down to doing the tasks that are going to help them. Because kids specifically, like habits are not taught, they're caught. People will modify everything that we do. And so if we want to be able to, model the things, if we want to set the example, if we want to help other people level up, if we value ourselves on caring about others, one of the best things that we can do is taking care of ourselves physically by leading by example, making the best decisions that we can. If we're not perfect, hey, that's the name of the game. Just get right back on the horse. In regards to former athletes, right? Why is this an important topic? For me, sports are everything growing up, right? Like for me, I was the small kid. I was the runt. Really, to about the age of 14, I was 5'2", 103 pounds, soaking wet, permanently in the friend zone. Not a great spot to be at that point, right? And I learned through sports that when I could prepare my body, when I could outwork the competition, when I could put in a specific plan, when I can execute a specific plan, there can be untold benefits to your life, not just physically, but mentally. So being an athlete can help build this mindset, whether you're an athlete who's just getting started or somebody who has been one previously. Like when you tap into that belief, when you tap into those habits, those traits, those behaviors, those memories, that can be an incredibly powerful thing that you can take and it can propel your life in many different areas. And so, when I first got started, as a coach, when I was in college, when I was 19 years old, I was working with our collegiate wrestling teams, right? I was doing shadowing, and I was shadowing my professors when they were working with semi-pro baseball players in the summer. And so getting this exposure early on worked incredibly well, to the point when, I moved out to Denver. I worked for the strength coach of the Denver Nuggets. I was able to, work with and see many of the athletes as they were coming back from an NBA lockout. After that, I was able to do NFL Combine training. I was able to work with elite level athletes in the NFL, NBA, NHL, college, and to this point, still work with many former athletes and even some professional strength coaches, right? And so when we can impart some of these key principles when it comes to being an athlete, but also making the right strategic adjustments, not only will you be able to look great naked, but you're going to build a body that's going to be able to perform the way that you're looking for specifically. The biggest mistake that former athletes make is repeating the same workout that they did 10 years ago. Now, with athletes, there's often ego, which that could be a great thing from a performance standpoint, but we can't blindly follow the same strategies that we did 10 years ago when every other aspect of our life was probably built around performing for that sport. We have to design a program that meets us where we're at now. You have more mileage on your joints. Your metabolism is probably different. Your body composition is different. Your hormones, they probably changed. And your stress and your sleep are probably a little bit different. And so what we have to have is synergy between the way that we train, the way that we eat, and then our lifestyle. If you want to think about it this way, compared to where you were, say when you were 18 to 25. When you're 18 to 25, you probably had more sleep. You probably had less stress professionally. Shit, just being alive 10 years ago was less stressful than it is now, right? Can I get a hell yeah on that one? In addition, your training, things felt a little bit smoother. You probably had a little bit more time for it. You were optimized from a physiological sense, at least compared to where you are now. And so if all of these different things have changed and your ability to recover has changed, you can't apply the same workout and expect the same result. And so one of the most important things is to make sure you're building a workout that's designed for your present state, not your glory days. And so in many cases, what does that mean? It means you can keep some of the same core principles in. You can keep explosive training in. You can keep some strength work in where it's going to be heavier loading, right? But what we need to do is we might need to dial that back. We might have to cut back on what the volume is or the intensity or the frequency in which you train. A quick example, like I wish I could bench, squat, power clean, sprint, jump 4 or 5 days a week. Would be wonderful. You know what? My body just doesn't like it quite as much as it used to. Crazy how that shit happens, right? So instead, what can I do? Well, I can incorporate those things once a week, twice a week. We can do something like a heavy, light training split. What does that look like? Well, this is based on neurological demands. If you really want to nerd out, check out the work by Charlie Francis, who coached Ben Johnson, who unfortunately got caught doping in the 1988 Olympics. But regardless of the doping, everybody was probably doping then. Regardless of that, the training methodologies are absolutely crucial to understand. So let's take this idea and expand it, right? So we can't just do the same work as from 10 years ago, but let's talk about heavy light training. So heavy light training, one day you do exercises, you do things that are going to be what we call more neurologically intensive, more intense. This would be sprints. This would be jumps. This would be throws. This would be heavy lifting. Things that are more taxing directly on your central nervous system. In the world of performance, you need to be able to fully recover. You need full neural recovery to be able to improve performance, right? This is where a lot of people go wrong with like exercise classes, which we'll get to later on. So day one, hey, you might be doing a lot of box jumps. You're sprinting, heavy deadlifts, heavy squats. Great. And your volume is a little bit lower. The second day, you can still train some of the same movement patterns and the same muscles, but it's going to be more extensive. So we have an intensive day. It's more intense, more demanding on the nervous system. And then we have an extensive day. An extensive day, it's going to be more volume based. Think more hypertrophy work, or the load is going to be a little bit lighter, but the volume will be a little bit higher. And so we have an intensive day followed by an extensive day. And so the extensive day, it could be higher reps. So let's say it's a lower body focus. Well, you could do a Bulgarian split squat. You could do a Romanian deadlift. You could do, some isolation work for your quads, for your calves, for your hamstrings, whatever. And then the rep range is a little bit higher. And so what this allows you to do, it allows you to both scratch that itch when it comes to training for performance, for building strength, for building power, preserving it, all of these great things. But by adjusting the overall training style to a more extensive blend on the second day, we can still keep training volume high, still keep you making changes in terms of body composition, but it's going to allow better recovery for your nervous system, your endocrine, your hormonal system, your immune system, which is crucial as well. And by extension, this is a great way to blend both the desire for looking great naked, but also being able to perform your best. So that's one huge recommendation in terms of adjusting your workouts. Now, the second mistake we have to avoid is living and dying by the barbell. I grew up in the age where strength was always put at a premium. I remember so many articles that more or less alluded to, if you don't bench, squat, and deadlift, you are a pussy, right? Well, that's not the way that it operates, right? And so a lot of people will get an emotional attachment to a particular type of exercise, much like they will in a diet. Because if something worked incredibly well, hell yeah, like go back to the well, it worked. It's not that barbells are bad or any one of these methods are bad, but an over-reliance on any one tool, on any one system, without factoring in how they actually impact us now, not 10 years ago, is a huge mistake. The number of lifters who live and die by the barbell thinking that they have to bench heavy, squat heavy, and do these things forever, tell you what, like that's what keeps physical therapy clinics in business, right? It's that ego component of living and dying by a particular training modality, especially the barbell. And so what we need to think about is there is no must-do exercise. And if we break things down into movement patterns, instead of just doing a barbell deadlift, we could do a Romanian deadlift, a single leg deadlift, a hip thrust. You can use a kettlebell, dumbbells, whatever tool we have available. We can still get the same training adaptation. Like your body doesn't know training tools. It doesn't know sets. It doesn't know reps. It knows a movement pattern. It knows tension it must create in the muscles, and it knows the amount of metabolic stress, aka the pump that is happening throughout. So it knows time. Okay. And so you can manipulate those variables while using any tool that you want to get the desired outcome. And when you understand that principle, you can adjust your training based on wherever you are, but you can also do it in a way where it's not going to beat the living shit out of your joints. Because when you force feed exercises that beat the snot out of your body, when you're getting chronic soreness, if you're getting sharp pain on an exercise, you don't need to do it. It's just going to lead to long-term pain. And long-term pain, that's going to lead to long-term inconsistency. Long-term inconsistency, what's that going to do? Well, shit, if you're not doing the work in the gym, your body's going to fall apart. And so we need to focus on training movement patterns with exercises, with tools that fit your body, not that worked best in your glory years, or that some random ass influencer on social media says you need to do it or you're being a pussy. It's not the case. The third mistake that former athletes make with their training is they switch it up too often. There tends to be a giant swing. Either athletes follow the same exact program that they did years ago and it doesn't fit, or they change things up constantly because maybe they think that they know exactly what to do, or maybe they're just trying to have a little bit more fun because training was incredibly rigid before. In fact, one of my clients, Nate, he's I think probably 38 now, father, played college football as a quarterback. He's got young kids. He's traveling a lot. And I remember when he first signed up for coaching, he's like, Eric, like if you have me do power cleans, like I'm out, man. Like I'll do anything, but I'm not doing power cleans again. He just did not want to do power cleans after doing them for years. Totally get it. right? And so case in point is like some variety is fine. There are no must have exercises, but if you are switching up the exercises that you do, you first never develop the skill to really get great at an exercise. And one of the most underrated things with training is the skill of actually doing things well, right? It's not just about getting a pump in your muscles. That's not most of it. So we want to be able to stick with exercises that fit our body, and we want to do them consistently. When we do them consistently, we become more in tune with all the intricacies of a movement. For example, if you have somebody who's never done a squat before, think of like a dorky middle schooler, they're going to look like a drunk ass baby giraffe all over the place. Knees are knocked inside. They're going to be curling over. It's going to be just awkward, right? But as they do it, they get more efficient. And so if you take that person who's very inefficient at a movement pattern and then they get more efficient at it, you can start to get more advanced with the things that you do. For example, you can change some of the cues. It could be, hey, okay, you're looking really good here. Now I want you to push your knees out. So when you descend, you're actually going to activate your glutes, your hamstrings, your adductors a lot more, and you're going to have more power. Or it could be, hey, we want to build your quads up a little bit. We're going to use your squat, but we're going to narrow up your stance just a little bit. I want you to keep your heels planted on the floor, but we also want to emphasize pushing your knees over your toes so you can actually get that squeeze through your quadriceps and build up that beautiful teardrop. A lot of people look for fancy ways to train. They look for new methods. They look for exciting things instead of getting very skilled at the exercises that are going to lead to the best results. And if we follow a program where we're constantly changing the stimulus with the idea of this is what's going to help us get better results, like we might be entertained in the short term, but there's nothing less entertaining than wasting your time on workouts that just don't fucking work. So some variety is good. Program hopping is not. You need to find simple routines and exercises that fit your body with where it's at now, and stay consistent. We can rotate, make micro progressions. It could be changing your foot angle on a squat. It could be changing your hand position on a barbell bench press. It could be, changing the length of your step when it comes to a lunge. By making small micro progressions, we keep the core movement patterns the same. We can still build on the strength that we have, but we change that neurological pattern just enough where we get variety to keep our body making progress. Mistake number 4, maybe this should be number 1, is eating the same way that you used to. Man, I remember back in the day, could eat absolutely anything I wanted, and I would wake up feeling like $1,000,000. Shit, nothing was more obvious to this than go out after a night in college, get drunk off your ass, and then you can go through and crush it in the gym, right? And you feel completely fine. Now you have a drink, you feel it for 2 or 3 days, right? And so what happens with a lot of athletes is they operate the way that they used to and thinking that it's going to work. Well, the reality is when you're an athlete, you can eat almost anything and you're going to burn through it based on practices, based on training, based on all these different parameters. And so to this idea of synergy that we talk about often here is if we have an imbalance between what our workouts are like, what our nutrition is like, and what our lifestyle is like, it doesn't matter what each of the component parts are if they don't fit together. When our training changes, when our lifestyle changes, our eating has to fall in line with that, or that's how we get out of shape. That's how we start to struggle. Now, you're probably in a situation where you burn fewer calories than you did before. You're behind a desk for 8 to 10 hours a day. You don't have a 2 or 3 hour long practice. You might not even have workouts. And so when those things change, in addition to us getting older and hormones changing, thyroid function, testosterone, cortisol, estrogen, progesterone, insulin, all of these things can change. If we don't adapt the way that we're eating for that, then we're going to gain body fat, which we don't want. So work in synergy. Your results in fitness are not just due to picking out this workout and this nutrition and taking an ice bath. It's about how do these things fit together. A quick example on this would be, hey, if you were doing workouts that require a lot of energy because they're high intense. Let's say you're doing high intensity workouts. Shit, let's say CrossFit. You're doing CrossFit workouts. You're lifting heavy. You're also lifting with short rest periods. That's going to be very demanding of what we call your glycolytic system, right? So that means your body's going to thrive on having glucose as a fuel source. If you are doing something like CrossFit, you have a lot of, say, intervals and heavy lifting at the same time, but you're not giving your body glucose, you know what happens? Well, you're operating with a shitty fuel for that type of exercise. That's going to drive up cortisol, your body's primary stress hormone. You might get leaner in the meantime doing a very low carbohydrate diet, but you know what? Like you're going to fizzle out long term. When we don't have carbohydrates to support that particular training style, in this example, cortisol increases, your body's primary stress hormone. And if you're already stressed out, do you really need more stress because there's a misalignment between what you're doing? No. And so case in point would be we need to align the type of training that we're doing with our style of eating. If we don't do that, we're shooting ourselves in the foot, both from a performance standpoint, but also a lifestyle and overall frankly, sanity standpoint. Athlete conditioning classes. If you are trying to get athletic, you do not need athlete conditioning classes. What most athlete conditioning classes are, not all, but the vast majority, are a bunch of jumps, throws, and bodyweight exercises done very poorly with incomplete rest under the idea of interval training, high intensity interval training. If you truly want to improve performance, especially with things like jumps, throws, plyometrics, you need full recovery. It's because the actual gains that you get from these things are derived from allowing your nervous system to fully recover between and then maximally recruit muscle fibers or high threshold motor units to generate as much force as possible. For example, if you want to run faster, you don't need to run and have a very short break and then try to run again, especially when you're talking like high intensity sprints. What that's going to lead to is going to lead to suboptimal muscle fiber recruitment. You're going to generate less power, you're going to be slower, and your technique could very likely change, leading to potential injury. If you're going to do a box jump as high as you can, stick the landing, come down, and rest. We're not doing these for time. We're doing these to generate force, and we're using the box to reduce the impact on our joints because, say, if you're jumping 26 inches high and you're landing on a 24-inch box, it's only 2 inches of displacement in terms of the impact coming down on your joints. And so athlete conditioning classes take the idea of athletic-based movement, and they do it with short rest periods as a way to make you feel athletic, which, again, isn't necessarily a bad thing. But if you truly want to improve your performance, understand what is actually needed for it. And for most people, that means they need to get stronger, they need to get more explosive. And those things are based primarily on longer recovery periods where you might not feel out of breath. It might feel like it's actually way too long for a break, but it's because your nervous system has to recover. So you can generate as much force as possible to create that adaptation inside of your body. Mistake number 6 is not incorporating explosive exercises. So around age 30, which is ironic because that's when most athletes, quote unquote, lose a step if you pay attention, we lose fast twitch muscle fibers. Our ability to be strong and explosive and generate as much power begins to go down. Now, there are a lot of things that we can do in training to limit and slow this down, but there is an age component, which is why most professional athletes seem to really peak between 23 and 28, 29, right? Obviously, you can get smarter at a sport. You can have other things change where you can have different increases in performance, but from a purely physiological sense, this is what we need to understand. When we think about it, we want to be able to generate and keep as much strength and power as we can. And it's not just from a performance standpoint that this is crucial, but like as we get older, when we lose fast twitch muscle fibers, this can play its role in first not being able to keep up with your kids. But like when we're talking being elderly, one of the reasons that people fall is they can't snap their foot out in front of them quickly enough anymore, right? And if you've seen any of the data on falls, it is eye-opening, absolutely alarming. Something close to 40 to 50% of people who have a fall leading to a fractured hip die within the next 18 months, right? And so if we are consistently inactive, doesn't matter if we were an athlete before, but we are not doing things that help hold and maintain these fast twitch muscle fibers, over time, yeah, there's going to be a decrease in performance, and we're definitely not going to like that, especially if we still fancy ourselves as an athlete and hold on to many of those beliefs. But it can be dangerous, right? Like we want to be able to hold on to as much of that as we can. So if we need to fall, we can put that foot out right in front of us and prevent, something bad from happening. Explosive exercises, what does that mean? So in the beginning of training, I like to focus on doing something like a box jump, a medicine ball throw. It could be a plyometric push-up. When we do these exercises with maximum explosive intent, we recruit more muscle fibers. When you can recruit more muscle fibers later on in training, cool, that means we can fatigue them, but we can also recruit them to generate more strength. And so what we want to be able to do is we want to keep some of these exercises in a joint-friendly manner. I like to say twice per week, an upper body day and a lower body day. For lower body, you want to focus on some type of jump. It could be a squat jump, a box jump, a broad jump. Each rep should be done with maximum explosive intent and then a full rest period. This could look something like doing a box jump for 3 sets of 5 with 90 seconds to 2 minutes rest, and do that after your warm up, but before you do a squat. If you're doing something for your upper body, it could be an overhead medicine ball slam. It could be a plyometric push-up. Again, 3 sets of 5 reps with 90 seconds to 2 minutes while focusing on generating as much explosive power as you can. If you do this, you can prevent yourself from tripping over your Nikes when you're trying to play ball at the Y. You can start to look, feel, and perform like an athlete again, but you can do so in a way that's not going to beat the snot out of your body. And now mistake number 7, the one you should avoid most of all, stop comparing yourself to your prime. At one point, your life probably revolved around sports. And now it might be work, it might be family, it might be something else completely. And you can still acknowledge that you are an athletic badass and you still have that edge, that mentality, those memories inside of you. But comparing yourself to where you were when everything else in your life was built around performing optimally for that particular thing, it's not going to serve you. In fact, it's just going to hold you back, especially if you try to apply the exact same strategies that you used at a different time period when you could recover differently, when your body was in a different state. And instead, what you need to focus on is what are the processes, what are the things that I want to be able to maintain and or improve, then how can I fit them into my life now? How can I make them supporting? How can I make them something that's going to be friendly on my joints where I can stick with them long term? Because when we focus on the process, that's how we can determine what the outcome is. And if we try to be perfect, if we try to have the perfect plan, but we can't execute it consistently, we're just going to shoot ourselves in the foot. So if you're a former athlete and you want to be able to look great naked without living in the gym, all you need to do, drop over on Instagram at Bach Performance, send me a quick message saying the word athlete, and I will break down some simple strategies that you can begin to apply directly into your training. Now, if you got value directly from this episode, please do me a favor, drop me a 5-star review wherever you are checking out this podcast and or this video so I can hear what exactly is working for you and where we need to improve. All right, that's how we keep the show free. That's how we keep it clean from all the advertisements, which I know that you always hit fast forward on your podcast when you're going for a walk anyway. And let's keep it that way. All right, until next time, I'll catch you later.
Hey, it's Eric here again. Now, there are 3 ways that I can help you look great naked. Number 1, if you want to grab a free copy of the Look Great Naked protocol to help you lose body fat without counting calories, then go to bachperformance.com/free training. Number 2, if you're a busy guy looking to build muscle, then I recommend checking out our Minimalist Muscle Blitz, which has helped over 1,000 men build muscle without living in the gym. Just go to minimalistmuscleblitz.com. The link will also be available in the show notes. Or number 3, and last, if you want to work with me directly and get the best results possible, apply at bachperformance.com/coaching to look great naked without living in the gym. Until next time, my friend.